Thank you guys for having me here tonight. I'm not sure I can do as good as Julian did, but I'll give it my best shot. My dad was the top 100 farmer, not me. I've never been a farmer. I've always been on the business end and the shipping end and the packing end of the deal. We've always hired and or had growers for us. But just to start off, we came down here in 1963 when Billy Long, my dad's partner and neighbor from Eastern Shore, Virginia, invited us to come down and farm down here in Florida because Dad was farming with his father in Eastern Shore. They got one long summer season, and that was it. You come to Florida, you got three good seasons. And if you're crazy enough, you might try to farm in the summer, but that's not a good time to farm because everywhere else in the nation is growing something, so you don't want to try to compete in the summer from Florida. But anyway, Billy and Dad got together just west of Zellwood here on Jones Avenue and cleared 40 acres to start with. I remember pulling in there. I was 7 years old when I came down. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. Sorry about that. But anyway, I remember pulling in that front gate, and all you could see was pine trees and palmettos. And Dad and his guys, they cleared every bit of that farm to the point we finally got up to about 1,200 acres total. The neat thing about growing on that sand land in Zellwood and what made it nice to grow and profitable at the time, I'm not sure it still is, but it's called, that sand land is what's called flat woods ground out there. And that means there's a hard pan underneath that sand land, and it can be anywhere from 12 inches to 6 feet deep. So we would cut ditches down, and we do it every 60 feet now. I can't remember what they started out at, but you could fill those ditches with water, and it would seep. It was called seepage irrigation. It would seep to the middle of that field. And you just had to play with it and experiment to get the right width of that field where you got an even flow of water going to the center of that field. It's basically you're raising and lowering that water table. And that's what allowed us to farm that ground fairly cheap. This is back before PVC pipe and all the fancy stuff now. So we had to dig rim ditches, or Dad did, around that whole farm, and you'd put structures in there where you could hold that water up no matter where it was around that farm, no matter what elevation it was. Back then there was no GPS, none of that stuff for leveling like we do today that makes it a little more technical, a little more easy to farm. You don't have the low spots and the high spots. You can manage the water a lot better. But being here and being in this farming for as many years I have, kind of like what Julian was talking about, you see a lot of changes. You see a lot of technology. Back then there was not much of it. You just got out there with these old antique tractors now, but it's about all you had, and did the best you could to try to grow something on sand. And meanwhile, Billy and Grant Lust and Zellwood Farms, all those guys are growing on muck. And it's easy to grow on muck because the ground is so rich with organic matter and stuff like that. It takes about, I don't know, what is it, Keith, about a third less fertilizer to grow corn on the muck as it does on the sand. I used to kid Uncle Billy. He'd get mad with me. I tell him, you got to be a real farmer to grow over here on the sand land. It's easy to grow on that muck. He didn't like that too much. But just looking over, since y'all sent me the invitation to come, and I've been thinking about it a lot, just the changes that I've seen out there at that farm. And all these farmers around here, when we started way back then, I remember seeing Dad and all his guys, they'd load that cabbage right in the field. Never went through a packing house or anything. We didn't have a packing house. You grew it in the field, you backed the semi out there in the field, and you loaded that cabbage right off the ground or the truck or the trailer. There was no pallets, there was no forklifts, that kind of stuff back then. You just muscled everything in there. Remember unloading seed potatoes off the railroad cars, come in at 50-pound or 100-pound sacks from North Dakota, And if you ever been by our packing house, that's why it's crooked on the road, because it was lined up with that railroad spur that went behind that packing house. In fact, it went all the way out to Duda and Sons. Used a lot of trains for shipping potatoes, for bringing potatoes in. Just like Julian was talking about, you ship stuff by train cars and stuff back then. Of course, now it's mostly trucks. Well, it's all trucks, basically. And over the years, it's come from manually stacking all that stuff on a truck from front to back, which I did many a times, to now we got pallets and we got forklifts. And the ease of getting things done is just, you know, if you've been through it, if you've seen it, it's amazing. The ease of getting things done and the amount of production you can have with the help of forklifts, with the help of GPS, leveling fields. If you ever go by the farm, you see how straight those rows are. That's GPS. Now, Dad and my brother Marks could drive a row that straight without GPS, but I never could. And there's not many people that can. That's a tough deal. You got to find something way off in the horizon down there, and you got to keep your eyes on it. But that's tough to do because you always want to look back and see what you've been doing behind you. So you can't keep your eyes on that. You can't keep a straight line. But computers, Cindy and I think Buster Williams, when Dad came to Florida, I'll start here, but when Buster Williams was in Mount Dora and he was doing all the sales for Lust and Long, or for Billy Long and Growers Pre-Cooler, and I remember Dad taking me to his office in there, and he told Dad when he got down here, we came down here in an old Chevrolet car and a Chevrolet 2.5-ton truck, bringing a spray rig on the back of it. And Buster told Dad, he says, now you got to go down to First National and you got to borrow $1,000, and you got to go and you got to get season tickets to the Gators. And he did just that, but he told Buster, he said, I don't need to go borrow any money. I brought $500 with me. He said, no, you don't understand, Frank. You got to go establish your credit. You got to get your credit established in town. But he also got those season tickets. He ended up with 12 of them, and we've had them since 1963, season tickets to the Gators. So, but anyway, Buster was a sales guy. He was probably the best salesman I've ever known. I mean, he could sell anything, and that's how we got started. He sold our produce for us, and it's just come a long way. Just to give you an idea, we miss Buster bad, but my recent salesman just took a new job. So Hank ended up back in the sales position this year until I can find somebody to replace him. But Cindy and I got married, and she came to work at the farm, and Buster introduced us to computers. Here we go. We're not writing stuff down on tablets and all this stuff anymore. Computers supposed to save all this paper and everything, which it does a lot. But that introduced, record keeping so much easier. So you got computers involved in farming, and now you got computers involved in everything on the farm. The tractors, all the tractors got computers on them. They've gotten so technical now, it's hard to get a mechanic that can work on them. You got to have somebody with a $200,000 laptop, I guess, to figure out how to get that thing to run again. But it just is to sit back and see where we came from all those years ago, 66 years ago, farming out there, to where we are today with the amount of technology. And I'd say the next thing would be these kids, my son, my daughter, some of these young folks that are working for us. All this computer stuff still to me is way over the top. But these kids nowadays, even my grandson can, figure out how to work a smartphone and computer and TV and all that stuff so much easier than we can. It's just amazing, the technology and how it's helped us to do what we do today in that farming. So that's the one good thing about technology. That's one thing about getting older, that you get the opportunity to see all that stuff happen, and you see it better your life and make things easier to get the job done. Thank you.